What's up, guys? Welcome back to our Birthright domain reviews, and we're finally moving on to a new area here. And these are the Northern Marches, which is really one of the most fun ones just to not just play as in the running a domain or anything, but actually to adventure in. There's just so many different things going on here, and just a very fertile ground for, again, just all kinds of interesting campaigns. So lots of different things that are achievable here. So the intro here. So basically, we'll read a little bit of this and then kind of go into some of the other interesting details. So the vast northern marches hold much unspoiled land. Some of the territory is the wildest in all of Annuir. It's rough life on the frontier, but this existence has made the residents tougher than almost anywhere else in the region. On the other hand, folks here also act less civilized than most, as they look more toward survival than toward more creative comforts, creature comforts. Living in constant fear of invasion or destruction, they have adopted a code that preaches living for today rather than for the future. What's the use of long-term investments when there might not be a tomorrow? So an immense elven wood stretches hundreds of miles across the northern marches, its placid coolness capable of making one forget the wars of kingship raging elsewhere in the land. This forest, the elven wood, blankets most of the region. Though its green depths include many varieties of trees, hardy evergreens are dominant this far north. In stark contrast to the beauty of the elven woad, the malevolent glow of active volcanoes in the northeast illuminates an immense palace of jagged obsidian and iron towers. This castle, the lair of the Gorgon, seems to scratch against the sky, defying the mountains from which it was hewn. All around lie untamed realms, home to the humanoids that serve this abomination of pure evil. And the Gorgon, of course, is the big bad of this whole setting here. So just an absolute monster, both stat-wise and just other resources and just scary things that the Gorgon can do. But we'll come into that when we get to the domain review, and separately when we review all the major sort of evil NPCs of the setting. So, and really, and we'll get to that again with the Gorgon's Crown. So, really, it's not just his own realm that is the promise, in all the other sort of subjugated realms that the Gorgon also has access to and dominates, that are a threat for the various human and elven and dwarven kingdoms, etc. So, the northern marches include only two Annuiran kingdoms, Dosone and Cariel. The region's other 6 domains are controlled by demi-humans, humanoids, and a particularly unpleasant Anshe, which again, Gorgon. The Stone-Crown Mountains run throughout the north, hiding the dangers for the unwary. Whether these threats come in the form of bandits, goblins, or angry giants that destroy traders' caravans, no one can say, but locals do warn visitors to stay on guard through the ravines of the Stone Crowns. And as we'll see, the 5 peaks are also just an interesting realm, but using that term loosely. It's just a collection, essentially, of provinces, as we'll see, that are not any one organized kingdom. So it's a giant lawless territory, but again, wonderful for adventuring. The Goblin Kingdom of Thurazor to the far west has its own hierarchs who are alternately friendly and hostile to their Annuiran neighbors. Unfortunately, goblins are not exactly subtle, and most humans can see through their subterfuge. Brigands, goblins, and some say ferocious Orogs inhabit the realm called the 5 Peaks. So again, this area is less a kingdom than a land ruled by a collection of robber barons. So Thurazor, not exactly an expert in the field of diplomacy, bases its main foreign policy on export and trade goods. So yes, there are goblin kingdoms in the setting, which is absolutely fun. Where are we at? So though most materials seem of poorer quality than most Annuiran items, they cost far less. This cost factor has allowed Thurazor to retain a political and guild positions throughout the north here. When goods arrive at market that appear far more skillfully made than the usual goblin fare, nearly everyone is diplomatic enough not to just suggest that these items came from goblin raiders rather than from goblin crafters. The giants from the nearby Giant Downs, another loose territory there, but again featuring many giants, occasionally cross the border south into Annuiran territory, pillaging any homesteads unfortunate enough to block their way. So just imagine somewhat semi-regular giant incursions, as in groups, if not not necessarily an army, but dozens to potentially hundreds of giants just rampaging across the land. So as if all the usual problems of running a country aren't enough, you have to deal with that in these northern territories. So, um, though the giants seem smart enough not to venture into the Gorgon's crown, yeah, that wouldn't go so well for them. Doson, Tuarhival, and the Uric lands come under the giants' tread once every year or so. No one has discovered a way to discourage the giants from their annual rampage. And again, there's a whole supplement on the Giant Downs separately, which we'll get into at some point. But yeah, so that's just a whole other area. And just a fun one. Also, just if you want a basic campaign out of that, you could have all kinds of fun going through that. The main danger of the northern marches remains, of course, the Gorgon. So the Anshe has made its stronghold here for 2,000 years, and people of the nearby realms long ago learned to avoid the foothills and mountains of the Gorgon's domain in the northeast. So again, as we can kind of see the lay of the land there. So borders the Giant Downs, but again, not really an organized territory as far as anyone like Human Kingdom or anything like that out of there. The elves, unfortunately, do have to deal with him. So if you are running the Elven Kingdom here, that will be one of your primary concerns. Markazor is another one of his sort of puppet domains. Again, we'll get into that. And then the other Elven realm here, the Sealwoad, which I don't think is considered here as part of the Northern Marches. I think it actually belongs in the Eastern Marches. We'll find that out. Again, borders not quite the Gorgon's crown, but more Kalad, which is another one of his puppet realms. But as you can see, no domain is really all that far away from the Gorgon's crown. And as we discussed in earlier reviews, really whenever the Gorgon goes on one of his larger rampages, most of these realms are the first to feel that wrath there. So, coming into the final bits here, and just again some of the more interesting things happening here. Still, their caution does them no good when the Gorgon emerges from his mountain fastness to harvest some new bloodlines. Over time, the population of the neighboring kingdoms has dwindled as residents seek safer pastures. The Gorgon has gone almost 20 years without stirring from his fort of Cal Satharak to ravish Anawir. Those who think they know how to prepare are doing so now. The truly wise understand there's little time or little they can do if the Gorgon comes rampaging again, and that is essentially a fact because all the other kingdoms are too busy fighting each other as opposed to ever reunite again. So today in the Northern Marches, so some of the bigger things going on here. A rumor circulating throughout Doson claims that scouts have seen Uric clans massing near the northern borders of the domain. They're getting ready to break into the Northern Marches in an attempt to push the Anawirians south of the Stone Crowns. Again, the two human realms here, the Anawirian realms, Doson and Kiriel, that's as far as essentially the Anawirians really pushed as far as the Empire is concerned, and sort of remnants of that. So that's why in this case it's why they're considered essentially like the frontier of Anawirian territory. And again, further north, which we'll get to someday when we cover all the Uric realms, again, think roughly a sort of Scandinavian type setting within the Birthright setting. So again, lots of those people are apparently then massing on the borders, trying to then push south and push the Anawirians out of the north here, basically past the Stone Crowns again, so that they're stuck to the south of that. So reports trickling back to Doson's Baroness indicate that this massing is a peaceable gathering of the clans, not a war party. Still, unease seeps through the populace like the very mists of Doson. So again, could be peaceful, could be a potential invasion. So there's all kinds of things going on here that are would just take too long to explain in this simple little blurb here, but all kinds of possibilities ripe for going either way or multiple different directions with that. So if you are running Doson, that'll be one of your major concerns too. But again, just as a hint there, so you have all kinds of things to deal with the non-human realms bordering you. Of course, the major evil NPC of the whole setting, the Gorgon, and then more human issues with a whole other populace potentially. Then finally, as if the possible Uric threat weren't enough, goblin armies have been spotted training in the mountains of both the Five Peaks and Markazor. The kingdom of Thurazor remains quiet, though, ominously so. Perhaps the humanoid troops simply want to prepare themselves for the Gorgon's attack, or maybe they're readying to blaze through Anawir. So, again, potential powder keg of just anything can possibly break loose here, which makes it so challenging and so fun to adventure in. Again, you're sort of on the frontier here. You have, again, enemies within, enemies without, very real existential threats. Thorazor, again, an actual goblin kingdom, which is not under the Gorgon's control, and so a puppet realm, so it's actually independent. But again, how much can you really trust a goblin realm? And then this entire lawless region here, the Five Peaks, really could house anything, and we'll get to that when we cover the realm in some more detail. So that is basically a little intro to the Northern Marches, guys. Again, one of my favorite areas of the whole setting here for Anywhere, and actually one where we've run a pretty awesome campaign in, starting in Cariel and then kind of venturing around in some of the other areas. But there's just infinite things to do with Birthright, and that's just one of my favorite features of the setting. So no matter what domain you're playing in, whether you're again running the game as running domains and being a ruler, to adventuring and anything else in between, just so many fun possibilities that you can try out here. So let us know, guys, if you have played in the Northern Marches, whether again you're running domains or actually just adventuring. Where have you adventured? Tell us some of your favorite stories. Hit us up in the comments there, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe as well. Always appreciate hearing your adventures, and then stay tuned for the next one as we start getting into the domains. We're going to take a quick peek ahead. So we're going to start actually with Dozone in our next video, so stay tuned for that. Thanks as always for hanging out, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.